Hi. Right. Let's have a look, Giulio. I've got Giulio. Is he look at you? And then
Julia's lurking. I've been texting Jamie. I don't see her yet. Although she must be on the other page, mightn't she?
She could be. I'll have a look. Would she just be called Jamie on the page?
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Shall I just text her and see? Because I was going to do a little intro and I just said, I'll probably bring you on after 5-10 minutes. So you never know. She might not have joined yet.
As soon as I see her face, it's fine. I can unmute, so it's not an issue. Thanks again.
How's it all going?
It's all right. It's good. It's good.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Hi, Julia.
Amy, I'm so pleased and excited that you're on here. Because, you know how much I love you, and I've been following you for years. So to actually have you on an event that we're doing is absolutely amazing.
Oh, stop it. Give me an ego. No, I'm excited to be here. And it's a shame because of the time difference. I've been watching the last hour or so, but I missed Naked and Famous would have been good. Sorry, that bell is my cat. Hello, Doody. My cat is called Dude, obviously. So, yeah, it's a shame that I've missed quite a few bits and pieces today because it sounds like it's been great, right?
Yeah, it's been really good. Bazard was amazing. He's
amazing. He is just such a presence as well. He's such a great guy. It's so fun to watch and such a pleasure. So,
we did actually touch. They actually kind of touched upon what you're talking about today, about kind of the post-COVID and the consumer thing. So I mentioned that you were going to talk about this today. So it's really good that you are.
That's great. I can see Jamie connecting to audio. There's Jamie. I'm gutted to have missed them because I think they're super smart guys, and I feel like them, emerging in the denim scene must be 10 years ago now, right? It's a long time anyway. And it's their energy. I think their success is just their pure passion. It's so hard for brands for that to come through, but for just the pure energy that they both bring is just you can't not catch it, You can't not. And they great. All the success they get. I hope they're doing okay during this time. But I feel like they're one of these companies is I hope they're doing well, but I expect they probably are because I just feel like they're smart guys. They're good at pivoting.
Yeah, so I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I will. I'm gonna host it up. All right. So hi everybody. I'm kind of looking at some names. I'm seeing some familiar names, but some people I don't know at all. But thanks for joining my little segment. I'm really excited. I'll introduce them properly in a second, but I've got Giulio and Jamie joining me today, all the J's. And I'm going to just briefly do a little intro about myself and what we're going to talk about today and why, really. So obviously I do Denimdudes, and it's the books and it's the blog and it's the Instagrams and stuff. But essentially what I do as a day job is more of a consultancy thing. I work with brands talking about what's new and what's coming, and that used to be 10 years ago a bit more trend driven, insofar as skinny jeans and boyfriend cuts and things like that. And it's become increasingly, which is much more interesting and much deeper, really. It's become more about, culture. Is much more directly linked to culture and what's happening around us. And of course, there's a lot happening at the moment. So what we've been noticing over the last few years is, the emergence of customization has been a really, really big part of the kind of the new narrative of what people want and what people are looking for, individualism and then vintage as well, things that are rare or things that are, one of one. Are really, really important. And so that all has been kind of coming in. And then I think sustainability and values as well is a really big thing. And that's sort of really affecting what a customer is looking for and what they're buying and what they're attracted to. And And then COVID hit. So it's almost like this was happening before, but COVID is really kind of like almost putting a magnifying glass on some of those big kind of macro like trends in the market. And so I talk to a lot of clients about this sort of stuff. And then, of course, I talk to friends about this sort of stuff. So Giulio and Jamie are actually, I'm lucky to count them as actual friends. And we've probably nattered about these kind of things in the past quite a bit. And so, when Ben reached out to me and said, do you want to do a segment? I thought, well, I'm interested in that. And they're very interesting, fascinating, and smart people. So I thought, fuck it, let's talk to these guys. So I'm going to introduce them now. Basically, Giulio is going to speak more about custom, and Jamie's going to speak more about vintage. But essentially, like, I'm guessing you guys are both going to like jump in about this whole subject, retail, vintage, customization, everything. But Giulio is a good friend of mine. He's actually one of my best friends in the whole world's husband. So I love Giulio to death. He's an amazing guy. And I'll introduce him first. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he does, because he started off as an illustrator and over the last few years has gone into Chainstitch embroidery and done it with individuals, bespoke stuff, but also big brands, events. So we can talk about events and live events and all of that stuff as well. So over to you, Giulio. Do a bit of an intro.
Thanks so much, Amy. Thanks so much. I love you massively. Mega. So I hope you hear me okay. I hear a tiny feedback, but it should be okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm an illustrator, and I started as an illustrator working for large company, from airlines to railway systems to and so on and so forth. And then eventually I got into Chainstitch. It's something that I come from punk, so my personal side has always been into personalization for communication purposes. So always trying to deliver some kind of messages, may that be about changing the world or changing people's perspective or stuff like that. So the Chainstitch is essentially a tool for me to communicate and to deliver some. It's not just aesthetic, but it's also a conceptual. So I do a lot of exploration in humor, as well as thoughts and just the messages generally. So as you can imagine, just now it's an overwhelming period for messages and people wanting to express themselves and people wanting to talk about their feelings and expressing their feelings through emoji on Instagrams or whatever. So for me, it's what should we talk in particular? Because I guess
I'll introduce Jamie first, and then we'll dive in.
Okay.
Jamie, where are you? Are you there? I've put it on speaker view now, so I can't see you. Let's see. Are you there? I don't hear her. Do you hear her, Jamie?
No.
Hello?
Oh, I hear you now. Now.
Am I good? I had to leave and then come back because I have audio issues.
No worries. Yay! Welcome, Jamie.
Hello.
So, Jamie, I'm trying to think. We met at Inspiration probably 7 years ago, maybe 8 years.
8 years. Yeah, a long time.
Yeah. And that was it wasn't the first. So Inspiration's vintage show here. I'm sure a lot of people know that. And we met at, what was funny is Inspiration obviously is very high level and lots of very, very serious vintage dealers. And I was with Amanda at that time. Remember Amanda? I used to do this thing. And you were one of the nicest, most personable, and helpful and friendly of all the vendors. You were just I got you, girl. And so I think we always used to gravitate towards your stand every time. But you also had incredible stuff. And I think that's what's amazing about Raggedy Threads. For those who don't know Jamie, she has 2 amazing stores, one in LA and one in New York. And I think, you have incredible stuff, but it's really competitively priced as well. And you've been in the vintage market for a long time. But yeah, you go for it. You'll probably do a much better job of introducing yourself than I will.
I mean, like she said, I have 2 stores, one in LA here, which is temporarily closed at the moment because of obvious reasons, and New York in Brooklyn, and that's open and safe in that city at the time. But just kind of back and forth. That's my life right now. And now me and Amy were stuck in LA at the moment.
In the smoke. And we haven't actually seen each other yet.
I know, I haven't even seen you at all. And we live 20 minutes away.
Damn it. So yeah, I guess now that we've both all been introduced and everyone knows you a little bit, how should we, let's think. Okay, so maybe let's get into COVID. So I feel like retail has been changing massively over the last, say, 3 to 5 years, something like that. Retail spaces have changed. The interactions with consumers has changed. And obviously, like Giulio could speak a lot to that, as far as like events and consumer engagement and stuff like that. Then COVID hit and it was like shut down. How have things been for both of you over the last, say, I don't know, how long have we been doing this? 5 months, 3 months, however long we've been doing this?
5.5 months, is it? 5 months and something, yeah.
Such a long time. So how about you, Giulio? Okay, so you used to do quite a lot of events, and events are out. So how has it been for you? Have you seen business drop? Is it pivoted? Has it changed?
Yeah, so the way it changed that is that essentially just before the COVID, when the COVID started in Italy, in a day and a half, I've dropped every single event commission up until the end of September. And it was probably about 7 events with 7 different brands, like major brands from 1 to 3 days. So it consists, quite immediately. With some of the companies not taking any commitments whatsoever, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah. I have quite a good time, so you never know. We might get to that.
Sorry, we cancel it. Bye. So essentially, I mean, business-wise, there has been a change. So where the interest was to make events or just to collaborate with larger brands, which was kind of personally not fading away, but I really wanted to work with independent brands and independent brands a little more. So I got to a stage where I'm still doing these events because I love it. I want to be a little more selective and blah, blah, blah. But as soon as the COVID started, events just completely gone and no brands collaboration whatsoever. There was some engagement on the online. So the online picked up. The online content, do a day in your life, tell us what you do and blah, blah, blah. And so, entertaining customers in a different way rather than the experience wasn't physical, but it was just more about showing your process and, engage them in a way of doing things, personalization and then send them over or competition and stuff like that. So then after those 103 days of COVID, which essentially was the main kind of lockdown, independent brands got into it. So started to call me and doing small collaborations for the new collection, which was super, super exciting because it's not something that necessarily can be justified in terms of costs. So personalizations, they vary, obviously they vary, but in-store collaborations are different. But if you do an application with Chainstitch, everything is just done by myself or by handmade. So we're not talking outsourcing with the labor cost of different countries. So it's just a different cost. So essentially the commitment was quite large and they just felt really proud, very, very, very happy about doing personalization of their ongoing products.
So it'd be like little sign-offs or things that added value to carefully considered products anyway. So it was just like elevating something that was already pretty elevated kind of thing.
I also feel like personalization is huge right now because everybody wants everything personalized. It's not so much as going out and getting stuff made, outsourcing. Like everybody wants something very personal, which is like what Giulio's doing is like everybody wants that handmade feel, that hand done feel because we're all so vulnerable at this moment. They just want something really happy and really like handmade. So I agree with you with that.
Yeah. So do you think, and also with the lockdown, I mean, I noticed, like you said, a lot of stuff went online, Giulio, and obviously it's really hard for you to, well, I mean, you can be like, here's my chain stitch machine and my name's Giulio and stuff like that. But like, you know, people as well are interested in doing stuff themselves. So they're kind of more interested in crafters, because I feel like suddenly they were like starting to identify with, and they even have a bit more time with their creative side. And so then they suddenly maybe are becoming more interested in creative people who are creating for a living, because that's the other thing. Some people have like lost their jobs and are like, now I can do the thing that I've always dreamt of doing. And in a way, Giulio, you kind of did that, like, you know, in the last, I mean, you've always had a very vocational job, I guess, but, you know, you found a craft in the last few years and have like run with it. So I'm sure people are identifying even more with individuals who are kind of like doing that on a small scale. So, you know, you can't just get hold of an amazing vintage Chainstitch machine and start teaching. I mean, you can, because that's how you did it, but you know, it's a big undertaking. So to be able to buy something from someone who is doing that must have been an added value as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's super important to evaluate the social aspect as well. So imagine there is people that have been in lockdown for a consistent 3 months, some people more. People's basic needs have been disregarded. Say like this, they've been put on a side because of a major issue, and so the inability of going out, the inability of meeting up, hugging people, expressing yourself, has showed itself in many different ways. And one of them, the most beautiful way, was probably just to embracing a craft and creating something of yourself, of your own, and making sure that word was going into something that you could show. May that be a patch that was just handmade and like really rough, the first attempt, but you know, that was still an element of like delivering what you are, and you know, and showing it to other people.
And it's almost like, so customization has replaced hugs.
Absolutely.
Right? That is in a way, it's the human touch. So Jamie, so what's interesting about this? Obviously, we'll get into vintage in a little bit, but what's interesting is, Jamie, you happen to also be a hand chain stitcher now.
I mean, that just came out of nowhere. Just started playing around and doing hand embroidery, and all of a sudden I'm do hand embroidery now and doing projects for people. And
I have one of your hats actually. I should have worn it. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting, because obviously hand chain stitch, which funnily enough, I've tried over COVID as well. You have certain friends, like you've done stuff for the guys at 316, and you've done stuff for, you know, me, and and you've done stuff for friends, and you know, I guess you started by doing it for yourself.
I mean, it was mostly for Christmas presents last year. I was just like, I'll just make a couple beanies on these watch caps I sell. And
my cap as well. Remember, you made me my cap, the smiley cap as well.
Lily at Blue made that.
That was early. That's an early piece. An early Jamie Raggedy Threads piece. I could probably sell that for a lot. So, you know, for you, obviously, like that hand pro, did that come to the fore a little bit more during COVID then? Like,
totally, absolutely. I mean, I was selling vintage online, but people were still weary about buying anything at that time. So I literally, and still now, just been selling smiley beanies. Like a ton of them.
Okay. That's so funny. That's so funny. So for you, I mean, obviously it just happened through your network and through your stores and everything like that. Through social media, through Instagram, that people just saw that you were doing it. And so again, what's your take on that? I mean, I guess we've already talked about it, that it was like customization is the hug over the mail. But did you also, were people interested in your technique? You haven't done any like workshops or anything, have you? And if people
no, this is
all asked for that.
No, I don't want to do a workshop.
I was like,
he can do that. He can do the workshop.
Yeah. So Giulio, what have you done online, Giulio, like during this time?
No, I've just shown the process. I've just done a few videos where I was showing the process and what it was, what's it like to create the artwork, because everything I do is handmade. And so it's all freehand. There's no computer involved.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an interest. There's a mega interest in just showing the process. Even just there's so many levels. The audio of the machine, people say, oh, I absolutely love listening to the machine. I could listen to the machine all day. To the actual, the way that the thread flows. I mean, we live in a world where there's the unpacking videos are a huge thing. So just watching someone doing stuff that they have to do.
Okay, that's a really interesting point that I didn't think was going to come up, but I am so interested in that. We've talked about that with clients in the last couple of years, and the idea of people watching processes. Now, one, I think people are interested in like learning like how someone does something, but two, I mean, I'm a big fan of ASMR, but like, just the idea of like the soothing qualities of watching, because I was watching, you did something the other day, you were doing the bicycle, right? You did your bicycle patch. And it's satisfying. Yeah, I got to order one of those because I got into cycling during COVID. Like that's my new hobby. So actually, as soon as I'm coming to the UK, I'm going to order one of those. But basically, I think people, it's an interesting craft, which has come to the fore during COVID and before. It's an interest in people and connection. It's an interest in, and then it's like a soothing, calming form of therapy in a way.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Okay. You going back to what you were talking about, you were working with smaller brands. So gone are the big kind of events, for Converse or Dr. Martens, where you're like rattling out loads of like monograms. That's gone. You're doing kind of like, I think, you've been invited into doing things like just the Instagram live conversations and things like this, I guess. And then you're doing process videos. But like going back to the work that you are being commissioned, like your income, it was more the smaller niche brands, and doing one-off pieces or customization pieces for them. Am I getting that right?
So during the COVID, I try and not keep my eggs in the same basket. I've always done it because it keeps my creativity afloat, and also things like the COVID. Things like COVID really shows you that if you just trust and rely on just one main source of income, and then things can get a bit funky. You can get a surprise. So without explaining too many secrets, I focus on the design element as well as the creation of pieces for a collection for independents, for example. So if some independent designers is creating some collection, then I'll be able to chip in and create a Chainstitch embroidered piece that goes with their jackets or with different item of clothing. So I collaborate in that sense as well, in the design element.
Yeah, almost from the beginning part of it.
Yeah. Essentially, the only aspect, I also create my own range of patches, which are customizable patches, as well as one-off patches, and that went really well. Just keeping busy, but generally just keep an eye on what the communication level is, and how things were flowing. Definitely were flowing. Right now, we are coming back into the events. So we're coming back into the events for larger brands, for larger retailers. And this may be, for example, one of the areas of my work is just collaborating with the brands with the limited edition range. That could be delivered in the stores as a one-off event or as a continuous, like a tour, for example. During this tour, these jackets or these elements will be sold, and when they're gone, they're gone. Or they could be, I work a lot with influentials or celebrities in that sense. And so when there is a press event, there's a chance to create some of these pieces that are unique. So you're interfering, you are bringing more value to their brand, their new collections, for example, collections that are not out yet. And then you implement them with something very, very specific that is relative to the interest of the celebrity or the influencer.
Yeah. So that really harks back to what Jamie was saying. So really what we're saying at the moment is, compared to a year ago and definitely compared to 5 years ago, increasingly that is what people are looking for, right? I feel like, I mean, in a way, this is a question to the audience as well, is, you know, as consumers, I feel like I'm getting this right, that we are all looking for something more personal, more one-off, more bespoke, more special just to us. So Jamie, I would have thought, could speak really well to that, because no vintage item is the same as another, except for if you get a box of dead stock. Box of dead stock aside, you know, it's about one-off pieces. So it might be interesting talking to you, Jamie, about, you've been in the vintage business for a long time. How is it different now to how it was when you first started? And have you seen that uptick?
Well, you know, what Julia was saying, like a lot of things now is like based online at this point. You know, I don't have a lot of foot traffic coming into the stores. It was closed for so long, and now I'm finally starting to reopen, and people are still kind of weird about walking inside or being outside. And so, you know, online has actually been a saving grace, considering I've never done online before, and now it's like exponentially good for some reason. I don't know. It's great. And you know, and I've talked to my fellow vintage people and seeing how their businesses are doing, and we have literally all conformed into this online presence that we've never had before. And also, you know, doing more private appointments and not really opening up to the public, because we just like, I feel like we're doing better this way in a sense than when we were doing it. But also vintage is doing well because, like you said, it's one-off, it's special, it's different, it's recyclable, it's good for the planet, like whatever people, you know,
looking for.
And, you know, a lot of the newer brands, like bigger brands, are not really coming up with a lot of production right now, because I think things are slower in production. So people just want like instant gratification. So like a vintage sweatshirt, cool, it's there, I want to buy it, I'll get it in a couple days. It's like Christmas for them, like receiving a package at this point. But I don't know. I comparatively, I mean, it's definitely, I feel like it's changed in a sense in that aspect, as far as like buying it for the instant gratification.
Yeah.
And
also the other thing, the style of the things that you sell, I mean, imagining, I guess, you know, that has been quite consistent. It's, you know, it is a certain consumer. But then I would imagine, and I've heard this at the Rose Bowl as well, it's like the type of clientele, the type of person that's coming in, the type of person who's buying, maybe that has changed and morphed. And like, you know, what I used to hear at the Rose Bowl before COVID, when Rose Bowl was actually happening, is there was, you know, just suddenly there was this newer Gen Z consumer who was coming in who was like learning about vintage and like getting into it. You know, we only have to look at like brands like Capital and how popular they've become. Whereas I feel like Capital used to appeal to our crowd only, and now it's appealing to a broader crowd. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like vintage could be appealing to a different crowd or a broader crowd than it used to.
Sure, it's definitely diversified over the years, because a lot of newer brands are, I mean, if in a sense it's already been happening, newer brands have always taken vintage as an inspiration for their work or some sort of inspiration. So when younger generation will see it on a Instagram photo or styled a certain way, they're going to want that piece for themselves. But, you know, it's a little bit pricey. Like not everybody can afford Capital. Not everybody can afford Visvim, you know, so they kind of go for the alternative of buying a beat up sweatshirt instead, or a t-shirt with holes, you know. That's just how, and it's more affordable and it's special. Like it's more one-off than buying something, you know, mass produced.
Exactly. And the vintage market, funnily enough, I was looking into some stats, and over COVID, vintage has been growing. In general, vintage has been growing by 12% as opposed to retail 3%. And then during COVID, Depop have apparently reported huge growth, like way above what they predicted. So they were already like doing this, and then suddenly it's just like spiked. So during COVID, you know, I mean, I'm sure that's not the same with every single vintage dealer or every single, you know, vintage store, but in general, vintage is growing and vintage is selling more and more.
Absolutely. I agree with, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And it's just such a special market. It's one of those things that will never go away, because everybody's going to want vintage in a weird way, whether it's like the consumer or the design team or the stylist that needs it for the upcoming movie. It's always going to be some sort of necessity in life. It's never going to go away. But the only problem is finding it is getting harder and harder and harder. So, you know, and you know, 10 years from now, I'll be like hunting for that 2002.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about this, and I think it is true. It is difficult. I mean, the sort of thing that you sell is mostly what, like
pre-60s.
Yeah, pre-60s. So that is becoming rarer and rarer. And I know you travel around the country, and you know, and also I think you know, I guess the longer you've been in the business, you have a network, and people know you, probably people come to you, et cetera, to sell. But that is, you know, essentially going to come to some kind of end eventually. But obviously what people are into and what they class as vintage is changing. I think in general, like what, you know, anything secondhand or anything like even resale, you know, you think about the resale market, there's stuff that people are like, you know, that people are selling, you know, capital from 4 seasons ago, and it's going for loads of money. So what people consider as rare has changed as well, or collectible has changed as well. So, you know, when we talk about like those markets going up by 12%, I mean, that's not just like, oh, pre-60s, that's kind of like secondhand in general, you know, secondhand market. So, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. I wondered what you thought about that as someone who has been in this industry for quite a long time and having you have a very specific aesthetic, a specific era, and a specific client and customer. But you're also surrounded by this larger market. Like, where do you see vintage going as a whole?
As a whole. I mean, I can't predict the future, nor I can predict my lunch today. So at this point, I don't see it ever really declining in a sense as most other clothing markets go. In fact, you know, there's always a new generation, another generation, and things always recycle itself every 5 years. So like, you know, this year all of a sudden the 60s and 70s stuff was popular, and then last year was like, you know, now we're back to heritage, back to the 40s look again, and then everything and then now it's 80s, 90s, you know, it's just everything kind of recycles or meshes up together in an outfit over the years. You know, there's really no change. People will apply their whatever 80s t-shirt with their 40s trousers. I mean, that's just gonna happen. It's always gonna be mixed match.
Cool.
It's cool. It's cool, right? Like 40s, 80s, you know.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I love the fact that people are mixing up styles and eras, and I feel like they're definitely doing that more than they used to.
Absolutely. And they're mixing it also with other newer brands as well. So they're kind of hodgepodge of outfit going on, which comes out kind of cool, you know. And I don't think it's ever going to change. And I don't think, in fact, I think it's going to be like, I don't know, I'm hoping to be surprised in the future. But I mean, I'm still, as far as like what I'm going to sell and what I'm going to do, I'm really not going to change so much. I mean, I've learned to adapt over the years on like what the current market is, what's on trend. And, you know, like I said, I love your trend forecast because I like to know like what season, like what kind of things our designers are going to be looking for. I can like stock that and have that idea of what's going to be the new trend for the season. It's
I feel like as well, vintage, like we're often chatting about this stuff, and I used to like going to the Rose Bowl used to be really great for me. And of course now, I mean, we all have our mobile phones, and I follow, you know, our like network of friends with all the vintage dealers. Like I follow all of those guys. And basically, I often, get information, like it goes both ways. I often get a lot of information from vintage dealers, because if a kid out there is like, I'm really feeling this thing, whatever it might be, whether it's like, 90s rap tee, for instance, as an obvious example. So it happens, the trends tend to evolve in vintage before anything else, because the time it takes for a cool, up-and-coming young brand to design, produce, distribute, and launch their range, everything has already existed before. We're not like, three-legged trouser or whatever. So basically, it's the nearest thing you can get it. Like you were saying with Capital, it's just like, if everyone's after, the kind of broken down collegiate hoodie with, holes in it and faded, it's like that's available in vintage. So Capital might put it out, but it's always available in vintage. It's
not necessarily for a hoodie like that. That's a little typical. That probably costs more in vintage than it does.
Yes, probably. Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, like, so I would imagine that some things, well, I've often found this, that like, whatever is sitting in the Rose Bowl at various different stands, and that could be from people like, along your ilk that's, is more, real, true vintage, through to 2000s, noughties stuff. You kind of see it in the market, before you see it in the stores, for sure. And so I'm sure, like with you, when customers are asking for things, clients or designers, because I feel like designers as well, like they are like creative sponges. They're looking for the next thing. They're looking for the new thing. They're inquisitive, as their very being. So they're kind of always sort of experimenting with like, what about this idea? And like coming to you and asking for certain stuff.
For sure.
So going back to like the consumer and like the individualism, Giulio, do you like, how much do you cross over with the vintage world?
Yeah, a fair bit. A part of the business is definitely working with pre-love of vintage. So there's the situations are quite, they're almost quite classic, where an item of clothing is kind of maybe run out of its life, and then maybe you involve the customer to bring the item back. May that be with a brand. And so brands, for example, can work with previous collections. You'll bring your item for the same brand, and you customize it. You create personalization on it, and that creates a complete different item. So that's an item that is pretty much has got a new life, and you don't have to pass it on to the next person. It's just a new thing.
Adds value,
yeah, and that's been done by the independent. So me directly with the independent, as well as through a brand using collections, like collections that are previously been sold.
And is that like, okay, so I got a question about like, sustainability, because is that sometimes just things that are like 2 or 3 seasons old that hasn't sold, like that, what you're bringing to the table there is making something that was previously unsellable, or they were struggling to sell, suddenly giving it new value. So, I'm guessing jobs like yours and input like yours can really like change I guess the level of landfill that's going on.
Absolutely.
It's almost stopping something from going into like a secondhand store or what have you.
Without a doubt. I mean, consider there's an aspect now that I'm talking to you. There's an aspect of, for example, how much of the collections that have been developed during COVID will be actually going for not through the shop. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be unsold, for example. So some of that stuff can be considered in a kind of repurposing. Take it like this, but in a way that you could work with them and personalize it for the next collection. For example, I've done some stuff with Adidas. It was a continuous for a while. It's called Maker Lab, and essentially we would interfere with Adidas products. May that be a sock, may that be a t-shirt, may that be a hat, and blah blah blah. So you are, and that wasn't, again, that wasn't for that season, but you can imagine how people want to see new things, as well as obviously, creating their own thing. So I think it's a good meeting point. There's many different interesting things, because obviously while the COVID develops, we've seen so many things happening with the industry, and you've covered it quite well before. You've spoken about it, for example, the way that the Bangladeshi production was, there's so many really difficult subjects. Without making names of brands, the customer's reflection on what happened, withdrawing, for example, for those that don't know, essentially there was a large withdrawing of payments from some of the main high street fashion brands towards their production. So essentially the production, they decided that wasn't the main point of focus at that time. So that we do. And that as well as many other aspects has created these extra value, a search into values towards what you're buying, what you want to get, Generation Z is a great thing, for example. There's an element of looking for something that has a purpose, looking for values, surrounding yourself with things that have, an interest, not for yourself, but just for the community. So, that being said, there is a question for the customers of, do I buy new stuff, or do I interfere, or do I use vintage? The vintage is kind of boomed as well. For one of those reasons is because it's very sustainable. You're giving old school items a new life, and how much money goes around through vintage. Imagine someone buys a piece of clothing in the 1970s. How many times that item has been sold? How much money that has been made? You know what I mean? It's just an increasing added value to it. So all these things are really interesting, because it also gives you an idea, ideas of how you can,
Yes, I really agree. I think it's a really good point to bring up. And at the moment, I've been really thinking about values. And like you say, I think people have, things have made the headlines during COVID, and people are really realizing the impact of them buying from a certain company that maybe they didn't really consider was that bad before. And now they're like, God, this really has an impact. And I think the word that keeps coming back to me at the moment about COVID is the word intentional. And I think if you, obviously our whole lives for the last, almost 6 months now have had to become so much more intentional. That is from walking out the door, keys, wallet, phone, mask, to how many people can I hang out with, and who are those people, and who do I let into my little tiny social circle?
Me, apparently.
Oh. Ouch! Burn! I accidentally burned you there. But who you're hanging out with, and what brands you're buying, and
Absolutely.
I don't know, how you go food shopping. Everything has become so much more, for instance, Jamie, just to recover myself from the holiday stuff. I'm flying tomorrow back to England. So for the last 2 weeks, I've had quite a bit of work on, but also I've been sorry to swear, but do I open up to other people, and what does that mean, and should I really? And yesterday I had a friend come around I hadn't seen in a little bit because she'd been away, so I was like, okay, and I saw her, but I was like, I haven't seen her because she's been in Hong Kong for 4 months. I haven't seen her. She's been quarantined for 2 weeks, but I'm like, there's a new person. So everything is very intentional.
Yeah, emotionally charged. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And so that, I think, boils all the way down from food, when we are getting takeout. I was talking to this friend yesterday, and she's like, I'm now being really intentional about who I buy from. So if I'm going to get takeout or delivery, I'm looking at specifically companies that are local, that are struggling, that are mom and pop kind of stores or whatever it is. You know, it's the same with me. I bought very little, but I bought like a pair of shorts off a vintage dealer friend of mine, a pair of socks from a friend who has a store down the road. So now I feel like the consumer is being so much more intentional about what they buy, and they're thinking about it because we have less money. I know some of us don't, but a lot of us have less money. And so every purchase is being more considered, you know. Would you guys agree? And would you say how has that affected your business, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, for sure. I feel like I even got to the point where I am selling, like keeping my prices as COVID friendly prices. Like I'm not trying to make a ton of money. I'm trying to be like everybody else. We're trying to survive through this, we're trying to get through this together. But I also have rent to pay, full rent to pay, you know, and all this stuff at the same time. So I was like, I'm happy just to make enough just to keep my doors open, honestly, like, because it's like, and if I have to drop my prices a little bit so you guys can still reaps the benefit of having something amazing and having something that will make you happy, then cool, I'm all for that. And I feel like that's what I'm not charging extra just to recover the 5 months I'm lost. Like, yeah, would be smart, but I'm not going to do that because I know that the entire USA is on unemployment basically. So, you know.
So that's an interesting point, because this is where I feel like it's interesting, where you're a small company via big company, and like this is where it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think we've all bonded over the lot. You know, you bond through trauma, you bond. So we, you know, even like if I've had like a corporate Zoom call, it's like first thing, how's everyone doing? Are you okay? What's the latest? You know, so I feel like our bonds, even, you know, business wise, have become more emotional. So hearing you say that is lovely, and that's really great. You're obviously a lovely person, so I'm not surprised. I wonder, like, if we think about like larger brands. I mean, I think a lot of people who are watching this, you know, some people do buy from larger brands. A lot of people are buying from like those smaller brands, smaller kind of like denim head brands and makers. But it is interesting. I wonder how bigger brands are reacting, whether they've got the same attitude as you, or whether they're like, we need all the money, you know?
Yeah. I see, if I may chip in, I see it's interesting because now you can start seeing how, for example, when the event are requested for the high street, then you can start see first of all, their attitude.
Yeah.
You know, is there any changes through COVID? Did they get affected from it? And are they nicer? Do they treat you a bit better? We'll get there in a second. But essentially, one of my attitude towards the COVID, after the COVID, was the importance of treating society as a whole, and treating the independent as well as the private. I've always done it, but I'm definitely up for taking a cut on my fees, for example, not by reducing the fee necessarily, but actually just to say what you have to spend as an independent. Let's work with it. It's totally fine. What can we do with it? And as you can imagine, working with a brand that is an high street brand, is a well-known high street brand, doesn't have the same budgets as an independent, but it's totally fine, because the interest is that, first of all, you realize that everyone is interconnected. The second thing is that we cannot just have large companies. There is just no ways. Because, you know, some of these companies done really well. Some of these companies, I got in touch with companies that I worked with before, and I said, I hope you're all right. And they said, we've never done better. I was like, fuck, how does that work? And then you start thinking and stuff. But anyway, it's just, I think it's really, really important to keep in business, you know, afloat. And for example, one of the things that I've done during the COVID is that whenever I had to outsource stuff, you know, I'm a jack of all trades. I've always tried to, you know, approach different things. I can metalwork, I can woodwork, and blah, blah, blah. But I got a woodworker to make me some shelves. Whenever there was something that someone could do, just make sure that you just get in touch. Are you all right? Do you need any work? Yes, so let's do it. Let's do that stuff. So we just eventually just kind of reemerge. And the most important thing is that attitude is there. You're able to take the creative input and just make stuff. So the budget, and now there's certain things that, you know, the budget can wait, you know, large budgets can wait. Now, going back to the high street, some of the news are obviously that, for example, in London, the high street, and the BBC has reported a loss of 37% of the footfall, especially in the central area. So you can imagine the central London areas, for those that are not aware, the rents are immense. Just absolutely immense.
And they're built around that business model of vast amounts of people, because, you know, Oxford Circus around Christmas time, you know, I've been caught in a crush. I'm like, am I going to die? Like, it's like the amount of people is ridiculous. So yeah, the rents were reflecting that kind of revenue, and now it's just that.
And one of the reflections that obviously that if those companies are not doing well, bear in mind that there is a lot of small companies that go around it. So there is small businesses, small cafes, small independent, you know, in Shoreditch, for example, there's many businesses that are on denim related, that they are struggling a little more than the larger companies. So it's essential, it's important to bring back footfall in those areas. There's obvious limitation, but I consider the larger stores, so in my plan towards the future, the post-COVID future, it's to consider those larger stores, larger brands as so I see the future as the shop should be a marketing tool, should be filled with experiences, should be dragging people in, obviously not in quantity, not in large quantity, but contributing that kind of brand values, you know, and showing what they can do with people. And so you can keep shopping, and then while you're going there, you can see the other small shop and just carry on.
It's almost like the food chain, like bringing people back. It's just like starting with those big companies and then it having a trickle-down effect on the market as a whole.
100%, because there's been a lot of discussions of smart working, which is great. You're saving up on transport and blah, blah, blah. Let's not forget that there's a lot of businesses, and they're not just those, the shops. The shops.
Yes, not just H&M, is it?
Yeah, that's it. So I think it's important to bring back and also to focus on those large brands, and hoping that things will kind of, you know.
I mean, I know you can't really talk about all of these things. We've been talking privately about this, but
sure.
Like you have been approached by a couple of brands to kind of like go into their store like 2-3 days a week to kind of create interest and do bespoke monograms and stuff like that. And do you think that will work? I mean, it's so hard. Everywhere's different. LA is still really kind of quiet, but it's a different city. It's like New York and London are very similar insofar as the footfall is bigger anyway and the volume of people. But obviously we're still in the middle of this and we don't know how it's going to evolve. I know that COVID cases have been going up again in the UK. And so it's scary. So it's going to be interesting, like how long this goes on for and where we have pivoted and changed, whether that's going to be a kind of like, it's going to go in waves, you know what I mean? Of like, okay, well, let's do this event tentatively. And then, okay, now we're shut down again. Like, it's going to be so hard to judge how it's going to evolve.
Absolutely. I think from going back to that point that you just made of working with companies and trying to create some sort of ongoing collaboration for a while, say like 2 or 3 days in the shop. What I do is essentially is very limited. So because it's like creating work, always be with your hand. So it takes a lot of time. There's no machines that will do it for you. So what you create during a day is essentially pretty much the same. So I will not bring footfall, like I will not bring sales, constant sales. So for me, the engagement that I will bring in for the company will be exactly the same as before, which is the marketing purpose. So the marketing is essentially what you're doing is that you're developing your loyalty, towards the brand. You're creating something with an independent artist
Yes.
that is trusted to be working with your brand, and will create something new and collectible, and will give you something that is, is then posted on Instagram, posted on blah, blah, blah. And even if I don't have a chance to go to that store and get that stuff from Giulio or from Trinity or from other designers, from other personalizers, customizer, or how do you call them? I will still see that on internet. I will still see that, and I will feel like that brand is worth buying into. So I think it's totally worth investigate. Let's investigate anything.
Yeah.
And I think a variety of not just Chainstitch, but for example, hand painting. I've worked with amazing shoe designers. I worked with really, really amazing people. There's a very difficult. And then, did you want to ask something?
No, you keep going. You're on a roll.
There's a very difficult subject, which is the way they treat you. Again, I'm going back to the thing that I opened before. You are working as an independent. I'll show you the studio. This is me. There's nobody else. Same person will answer the email. Same person will do the contracts, the emails, and then whatever. You are dealing as a person with huge teams with crazy timings, with marketing teams that will drive you crazy because they don't understand, they don't have time to understand your technique and blah, blah, blah. So it takes strength, but also a lot of patience and determination. So it's not easy. This is something that I remind to every personalizer. I say, make sure that you stick to your guns, because what you're doing is that you're creating a pattern for others to come. Why do we pay the production 50p per t-shirt when they do it? Because we created that system. So this is something that is relatively new. It has been in the 80s, for example. It will come back, but make sure that you stick to your gun, and let's create a pattern where we can work nicely with each other. You are as creative as possible, as free as possible, and you're able to work with them. It's really not an easy thing. And occasionally I bang my head on the wall and I say, is this really what I would want to do? But essentially, then you see just the people, you see the individual, and you say, you're just beautiful people, and it's worth working with you. And we can make stuff work. But what I'm stressing is that the relationship that you had before as an independent with these large brands has not changed. In fact, right now it's probably even worse in some aspects, because their budgets are a lot more limited. They want to shoot one bullet and get everyone right. And so it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, they're trying to do this much with this much now, whereas before COVID, it was kind of like they were trying to do this much, but maybe they had that much,
Absolutely, yeah. But it's totally worth it.
Expectations are a little bit higher. I did kind of notice that. Just a little bit higher than normally. Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Do you think, Jamie, it's because of the anxiety of making sure that, because the budget is limited, making sure that is right?
Absolutely. The budgets are lower for sure. The stakes are higher because they need to find a way to recuperate their company from their loss. It goes back to what I was saying, like trying to, do we keep going and try to, how do we save our company? By doing these marketing purposes, by going around it. But so the expectations from you or me as an individual is like, okay, can you do this, this, and this? And you're like, okay, I'm a one-person show. Okay, you got to give me some time. But no, it's like, no, I need it like next week. It's like,
absolutely.
Time frame has also been an issue too.
How do you mean? Why do you reckon time frame?
Just sourcing. Not sourcing or getting stuff, or even for your embroidery. Like I'm getting all these random embroidery projects, and I'm like, okay, I'm not that good. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, it's just fun for me, but it's just like the same thing as you. It's like, okay, I have this time frame to do these samples, to deliver, and you're just like, I'm one person.
Yeah, they don't understand the process. I think that's the differences as well in this shift, where you've got big corporate companies and trying to get something bespoke and beautiful and hand done, and they're so used to working with manufacturers on a mass scale that they don't have the understanding of how long things take and the value. And I think that's something that I think retailers, because I think individual people understand that. They make it their business to follow you on Instagram to see how that process works. Like we were talking about in the beginning, they're interested, they're watching, they're engaging. What brands could do better is having that same mentality as an individual does, and really getting to know the person and how it works and what they're paying for. Because I think, going back to your point, Giulio, about like getting people back in stores, when we first spoke about this, we were talking about customization, we were talking about like, it's like a hug, right? It's an online hug. So that is crucial right now for the individual and for the brands that is paying for that. The brand is the middleman, right? Because Joe Blogs on the street is the person who's going to buy it, but they're going to buy it through the brand, and the brand is going to employ someone like Giulio or Jamie. So it's just like the brand needs to understand and engage with that in the same way that the individual does. They have to understand it. And I think there's a lack of understanding of that. I think the individual person gets it. I think a lot of people who are watching this now, we're all familiar. We're all familiar with like built to last, made, like limited numbers, a guy in a workshop, or Jamie with a needle and thread. We all get it. It's like these bigger corporations that need to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, there's certain things that you just cannot go through, and it's just going to be like that. One of the reasons is because, as you know, larger companies have slower process. Lots of checkpoints.
Yes, and they work a year and a half in advance, all of this stuff, and yeah.
That's it. And although you have as much determination as you can, you still have a lot of the team is checking on each other. So they never really want to give you the last word. The approval is amazing. The approval will, I think it should be fine. It should be okay. And then you do everything, and everything is amazing, works out fantastic, and they say, okay. And you feel like you should have trusted me before. But that is not a conversation that you can necessarily do with everyone, because they should. But
they will trust you next time, I guess, and it's about building relationships. We're running out of time here, aren't we?
It's about building relationships at this point, but yeah.
Exactly. It might not work the first time, but then you can build. They should trust. After all, if someone is calling Jamie to do what she likes, what she's doing best, what's the problem with that? I know exactly what Jamie does. I know how she does it. Let's just do something with my brand. No, I'm not going to say Jamie. I don't want to
go somewhere else.
Yeah. Same goes for you. That's right.
That's it. I'm not going to say Jamie or Trinity. I'm not going to say just please just do what I say. I love everything you do, but let's do these that you've never done before, and we only just have one shot. And the budget is tight. It's just so many limitations. It's like, let's just trust each other. Let's just begin this process of blah, blah, blah. But that's part of the system. I think it's just not going to be changing really easy. But I'm hopeful. Even if the people are a little more feisty and they see a little more red and the budgets are a little less, I think we'll work it out.
Well, we're going to have to end there, aren't we, Amanda? Because that's it. It's so funny because at times I was just like, oh, we've got half an hour still to go. And then suddenly that's it. I hope everyone found that interesting. I didn't see very many questions here, so I've just sort of but Jess, thanks for your comment. She said, it's been like therapy. I've been struggling with this whole thought process, and you three have put it into words perfectly. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you so much, Giulio. And then thanks so much to Ben and Amanda and everybody else, the extended team who's been putting this on. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much, guys. I so didn't want to interrupt, but I was like, oh my God, Joe Clarity's waiting. But thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Really good.
Oh, we will, I'm going to keep watching, but we'll bugger off now.
Bye.
But enjoy the rest of the sessions. And thank you so much again. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Right. It's time for Ben and Joe to take over.
It is. Right, Joe, I'm just going to unmute you. I'm just going to do a little intro, mate, for our hour, if that's okay. Oh no, you're going to have to unmute yourself, Joe. Right, look, it won't let me unmute you. There we go. Are you there, buddy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, sweet.
I'm back. A great hour just there. Yeah, it was really good.
Interesting.
I had to take my camera off so I could wolf down a jacket potato like.
A potato.
A baked potato, yeah. Yeah, to anybody that's watching and listening, thank you very much for your support. Again, I know I keep mentioning it, but I will continue to mention it for the next 16 hours also. We do this for charity. Everybody gives up the time for charity. We try and do a nice event. We try and raise money for Save the Children Global. There'll be more on that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when they come on the show for an hour. There is a link in my bio to a raffle, and lots of good brands, including Joe himself, have donated some of their product to this raffle that's basically to raise money for the children. So please do share that information, pass it on. We are up to 190 tickets now. It's £10 a ticket. I personally think we can do 350. So please do share that information. If you're watching on YouTube, please press like and subscribe to the channel, as it puts us further up the charts. And who knows, somebody who didn't even know they were going to start watching this today has ended up, will end up becoming a Denim head. Who knows? We'll see.